So in this, these are the topics to be discussed. These are the criteria to be selected while choosing the design pattern. These we have to come across all these criteria. So if you satisfy all these criteria, then it is easy to select a design pattern. The first criteria here is you should consider how design patterns solve design problems. I'll be discussing in detail in the next slide. Next we have scan intent sections. Then we have study how patterns interrelate. Then study patterns of like purpose. Examine a cause of redesign. And consider what should be variable in the design. So let us discuss one by one. So coming to the first one, consider how design patterns solve design problems. The complete last topic whatever we discussed. How design patterns solve design problems. So just we are briefing here what actually we studied in the previous classes. So what are the things to be considered here? You should determine object granularity. What is granularity? Granularity is nothing but the level of detail. It gives the percentage of detail of information about the object. That means the client should know what type of object they will use and what type of data they use. So what percentage of the information is given to the clients? That is called as object granularity. So if you know this, what is the amount of data we come across, then it will be easy to specify the object interfaces. We know that we are going to couple the objects, right? Using abstraction, we couple the object, we cascade the objects. So how is that cascaded? How the interface is done between the objects? Which are all the blocks? Which are all the objects I can use it? So that we have to specify. And several other ways in which design patterns solve design problems. That's what the 9 topics that we have discussed now. All those 9 topics are to be known. Then only you can select a design pattern. So consider how design patterns or design problems includes object granularity. You should know the details, the information about the object, and you need to specify which object you are going to use, and the methods, whatever I have discussed now, you should know what is aggregation, what is delegation, all the 9 topics. If you know in detail about all those 9 topics, it will be easy to select a design pattern to be used. Coming to the second one, scan intent sections. What is intent? Intent is nothing but purpose, or you can call it as aim, or you can also call it as an objective. Okay, so you should know what pattern will solve which problem. So if you know the purpose of the pattern, then it will be easy to choose. So based on the problem, I should choose this is a pattern I can use for this problem to be solved. So what is it you have to do here? Read through each pattern's intent. You should know the details of each pattern. What is the detail you should know? You should know the purpose. This pattern is used for which purpose? Which problem that the pattern can solve. If you know that purpose, then it is easy to select a design pattern. Why you should know the purpose? You should know to find one or more that should relevant to your problem. So you have a problem to be solved. To solve this problem, I may need a single pattern or I may need a group of patterns. I can combine the group patterns here. So if I know the purpose of each of the design pattern, so based on the problem, I will choose a one pattern or more than one pattern. That is called scan intent sections. I will scan. I already know these are the patterns available. So among these n number of patterns, based on my problem to be solved, I will go for a single pattern or a group of patterns to be used. So I will scan the sections. Sections means the different design patterns whatever I have. So I will scan what is the purpose of pattern 1, what is the purpose of pattern 2, what is the purpose of pattern 3, so on. If I know the purpose, then I will choose the required patterns for the problem to be solved. Next I have study how patterns interrelate. That's what. If I go for one pattern, so not necessary to worry about the third one here. If I go for more than one pattern, next question is how these patterns will interact with each other. So I should know the relationships between these patterns which I am going to use to solve the problem. So studying these relationships can help direct you to the right pattern or a group of patterns. So if you know that how they interact with each other, how they relate with each other, then you'll be able to choose the right pattern or the right group of patterns to be used. So these are the things to be considered while selecting a design pattern. So what are the topics we covered now? Consider how design patterns or design problems, then scan intent sections, then study how patterns interrelate. Shall I go to the... So next we have fourth one. Here you are going to check study patterns of like purpose. We will be studying the patterns of which purpose. Like purpose means the purpose of the pattern should be same. That means for some specific purpose you have designed the pattern, right? So only you are going to choose set of those patterns here. So study only those patterns which are of specific purpose. It is not for general purpose. It is designed for one specific purpose. So that information should be known while selecting a design pattern. I think in the before that topic, how the design problems are solved by design patterns, also discussed about organization of the catalog. What is that we discussed? There are purposes, 3 types of purposes we discussed. What are those? Creational patterns, structural patterns and behavioral patterns. If you know the enough information about the creational, structural and behavioral patterns, then it will be easy to choose the patterns which are used for specific purpose. So you should know the information about all these 3 types of patterns. What are those? Creational patterns, structural patterns and behavioral patterns. That I discussed now in the previous classes. I just show that slide. This one. Discuss no. Scope includes 2 things. You can apply the pattern either to class or to the object. If I go for class, then in the creational part I have to choose factory method. In structural I will go for adapter. In behavioral I go for interpreter and template method. This is a purpose. Purpose includes 3 things, 3 stages or 3 forms. What are those? Creational part, structural part and behavioral part. If I apply the pattern to object, under creational part these are the pattern types I have to go for. Under structural part I have to go for adapter, bridge, composite, so on. In behavioral part, chain of responsibility, command, iterative, object. So based on the scope, we select these pattern names under creational, structural and behavioral. So you should know enough information about creational pattern, structural pattern and behavioral pattern. Then only you can go for these design pattern names. So yes, under 4th one, you are going to check which are all the different patterns. Different pattern names come under creational patterns and structural patterns and under the behavioral patterns. Is that clear? Coming to the 5th one, here you are going to examine a cause of redesign. So last class we were discussing now, if you go for static approach, then there may be a chances of redesign. Redesign is required in future. If you go for static approach, if you go for dynamic approach, there are less chances of redesign. Okay, so you should look at the patterns that help you avoid the causes of redesign. That means try to go for dynamic approach than the static approach. That will reduce the amount of redesign. Next we have 6th one. Consider what should be variable in your design. That means consider what you want to be able to change without redesign. Without going for redesign, what is that variable you can change? What are the variable types you go for? Or what is that instance variable, data types you are going to use, and what is the data you are going to change it, the return types. All this information should be known while selecting a design pattern. So what are things we discussed? Study patterns of like purpose. You should see which pattern names are used for which specific purpose, which patterns will come under creational patterns, structural patterns and behavioral patterns. Then also you should see to that, you should choose a pattern such that you should choose an approach, static or dynamic, based on the requirement to avoid the causes of redesign. Then you also have to consider that what should be the variable in your design, whether you are going to vary the objects or you are going to vary the class, whether the pattern should be applied to class or to the object. That